Been 5 years since a comet hit Earth and wiped out over 75% of the global population. Fragments of the comet are still in the atmosphere, the air is polluted, residual radiation lingers, and earthquakes and electromagnetic storms have become the norm. Humans have no choice but to keep living in bunkers. John lives with his family in a bunker in Greenland. He works as an engineer but also a scout, which means he gets to put on a hazmat suit and occasionally leave the bunker to check on the state of the world. One day he notices that another fissure has opened on the ground and realizes they're getting bigger. Then John goes to the beach and discovers a bunch of lifeboats together with a crashed ship. First he checks every lifeboat but doesn't find anything useful in any of them. Then he enters the ship through a hole and finds some useful tools that he takes with him. Further inside, he finds the dead bodies of the whole crew. In a drawer there's a notebook with a beautiful flower that he takes too. At that moment someone from the bunker warns him on the radio that there's a storm coming. John begins running as fast as possible as the electromagnetic storm approaches him from behind at alarming speed. Thankfully John manages to jump over the gate and enter the bunker just in time to close it again before the storm strikes. After the team decontaminates him, John sits in shock as he processes how close he was to death. He decides to see his therapist and shares how weird the current state of the world makes him feel. The therapist explains that everyone is going through trauma and pretending they aren't, so he advises John to stop pretending and be more open with his family. Meanwhile John's wife Allison is a meeting with the other bunker leaders, who are worried about running out of resources. While Allison gets a note telling her that John returned safely, Dr. Amina shares some information that she's gathered with scientists from other bunkers regarding the crater left by the comet. The size and shape of the crater prevent radioactive storms from forming near it, and its depth keeps polluted air from getting in. This could potentially make it a safe area to live in. However, Adam reminds her that the crater is in southern France and there's a civil war across Europe. Suddenly an earthquake makes the whole bunker shake, but everyone simply waits until it's over and continues with their lives. In the meeting, someone realizes that earthquakes have been happening more often lately. Amina explains that the tectonic plates are shifting again and causing more activity in the area, but a soldier says that if the bunker survived the comet, it can also survive this. Then Allison reminds everyone that they've received a distress signal from outside. Adam replies that they don't have the resources to bring in more refugees, not to mention the risk of diseases, so he wants to drop the subject. However, Allison reminds him that every decision must be voted for. Hands are raised and most of the group is on Allison's side, so they agree to send out a snowcat tomorrow. Later, while John is busy fixing the pipes in the bunker, his son Nathan is found outside by Allison, who angrily scolds him and reminds him of how badly John coughs every night as a result of his scouting. During dinner, John gives Allison the flower he found on the ship. Then she makes Nathan confess that he went outside and John gets angry too, scolding him until Nathan leaves the table. The couple then decides to dance, although Allison is worried to hear John cough again. In his room, Nathan uses a flashlight and the holes he made in his sheets to make stars appear on his ceiling, pretending he's outside looking at the sky. The next day John finds some cracks on the bunker walls. Meanwhile the snowcat goes out and rescues a bunch of survivors. On their way back, the team calls the bunker to ask for permission for a second trip since they had to leave people behind because they didn't have enough room for everyone on the snowcat. Adam immediately disapproves, reminding everyone they don't have enough space or resources. At that moment another earthquake hits the area and they lose connection with the snowcat. The bunker is shaken more than usual, causing both people and furniture to fall. Suddenly various spots in the ceiling begin to collapse in multiple rooms, trapping and injuring several people. Some rubble hits John in the head and the dust makes his coughing worse, but a friend comes to help him out of the corridor. The alarm goes off as the bunker is shaken again and an explosion can be heard nearby. John rushes to the office to rescue Allison, who was hit by the rubble too. He helps her stand up and together they go looking for their son. They find him in his room with a mask on, but he still has trouble breathing. John tells his family to pack as much as possible while he goes looking for more masks so they can leave. People are panicking and running all over the bunker, but John still manages to reach the lockers and comes back with some masks. Nathan immediately starts feeling better, so the family starts making their way out. Since the shaking continues, the walls are beginning to crumble too. A desperate crowd is gathered at the exit, which is only partially open. They won't be able to leave through this door, so John guides his family to the east tunnel. Unfortunately, they discover the tunnel has collapsed, but since this is their only choice, John makes his family crawl under the rubble. The shaking almost causes the debris to fall on them, but they move fast and manage to cross the tunnel to find the other door. John presses a button to open it, and the powerful engine causes the room to start collapsing faster. The family runs quickly and makes it outside safely. Survivors are running all over the place while geysers start to shoot water. The couple loses sight of Nathan and runs back to find him helping a fallen Amina. The family brings her with them as they run to the beach, where the survivors are climbing on the boats to try to escape. So many people pile up that one of the boats ends up falling on its side, causing the crowd to fall into the water. Some desperate survivors use the chance to try to steal Adam's mask, so Allison and John run to help him. A guy jumps on John and manages to steal his mask before he and Allison drag Adam to the shore. There's only one boat left, so John guides his family and a few survivors to board it quickly. Allison wants to bring as many people as possible, but the pilot points out that too much weight would make the boat sink, so they have no choice but to close the door in people's faces. The survivors outside cling to the boat until it finally takes off. At that moment a huge wave appears and hits the beach, killing all the survivors who couldn't escape. John's boat is thrown around by the wave too, but luckily the pilot pushes through and they continue to sail safely. Moments later John uses a device to confirm that the air quality is good here, so they can take off their masks. Then the group discusses where to go, and since Iceland is gone, they agree their closest destination is England. A few hours later the boat stops working. John takes a look at the engine and manages to fix it, so they can keep going. When night falls, Nathan is happy to finally see the stars. A few days later the boat stops again because it's out of gas. The group has no choice but to ration the food and let the sea take them somewhere. After a long wait, the boat finally reaches land. The group looks outside and is surprised to discover they're in Liverpool. John uses his device to confirm the air is clean and says they should find shelter, but when they look down they notice that part of the area is flooded. John takes an oar and starts rowing until the boat finally hits a dry road. The group gets off the boat and notices that the town looks abandoned. They see a few people down the street, so they follow them until they find a humble settlement where the locals try their best to survive. John notices that many of them look sick, so they won't live for long out here. John's group hears screaming and follows it until they find a crowd protesting outside a bunker protected by armed soldiers. Adam rushes to the gate and explains that his people are the governing officials from Greenland Station, so he requests emergency asylum. The soldiers ask for their badges, but only Allison has hers, so she's the only one allowed to enter. Adam starts arguing with the soldiers while the crowd grows more agitated, and a soldier ends up shooting Adam to kill him. When a random survivor tries to get in, he's shot as well. The soldiers close the gate as an alarm starts wailing. At that moment a storm appears in the sky and the crowd runs away in panic. Amina and John's family run to stop a van and ask Obi to take them to London. Obi wants payment, so he lets them get in his van after taking John's watch. The vehicle speeds out of town and avoids the storm just in time. Allison hugs Nathan to comfort him while Amina grieves for Adam. Obi explains that people are desperate and will kill for food. A few hours later the van stops in the middle of the forest for a break. Obi smokes a cigarette and shares that he came to England from Nigeria 12 years ago, but he doesn't regret it. John asks him if he knows anything about the state of France, but Obi says that the area is too dangerous and thinks that the crater story is fake. Suddenly they hear some rumbling and discover that several comet fragments are falling from the sky. Everyone rushes to hold on to a tree right before the fragments fly above them, destroying the top of the plants. The resulting wind is very strong, but the group manages to hold tightly to avoid being blown away. Obi says his van is all he has and runs to try to retrieve it. However, the fragments start crashing on the ground and one of them kills Obi, also destroying the van in the process. Once the fragment shower is over, Amina and the family gather their bags and every useful item they can find in the van and continue their trip on foot. Eventually they arrive in London and knock on the door of a very big building. A hole opens and Mackenzie points a gun at them, but she immediately puts it down when she sees her old friends and lets them in. Then she shows them around, revealing that this building is a retirement home, so all the survivors living here are elderly people. Mackenzie explains she managed to seal off this wing and the generator keeps the air filtration system going. The group gets to relax with some food and drinks for dinner. John asks about the crater and Mackenzie says she's heard the rumors, but she doesn't know if they're real. Screams and gunshots can be heard on the streets and Mackenzie confirms that London isn't safe anymore. Later Allison tries to sleep but she keeps hearing John coughing in the bathroom. When she looks in the sink, she discovers blood. John tries to claim it's a normal nosebleed but Allison doesn't believe him, so John reveals his secret. A doctor in the bunker told him that bleeding is a symptom that means he has 6 to 8 weeks left to live. Allison has a breakdown and wants to stay in the retirement home to spend John's last days quietly as a family. However, John refuses to die there and instead wants to find a new home for his family so he can die in peace. The next day Mackenzie gives them one of the many abandoned cars from the retirement home and a gun to defend themselves. After Mackenzie hugs them one last time, Amina and the family leave. A few hours later, while crossing the countryside, John notices that Nathan looks down and proposes to play road trip games. Suddenly a bullet destroys a car window and hits Amina, instantly killing her. Some men in the bushes keep firing at them, being careful not to hit the engine because they want to steal the car. John immediately gets into position behind the vehicle and starts shooting back, killing the robbers one by one as they come closer. When there's only one left, John runs out of bullets, but thankfully Allison has a second gun and shoots the last man before he can hurt them. After taking a moment to comfort each other, the family digs a hole and buries Amina. John says some prayers as a final goodbye and Nathan finds it curious because praying sounds like wishing them well when the person is actually dead. A couple of hours later, the family arrives at a big desert area and realizes this is what's left of the English Channel. At least this means they won't need a boat. As the trip continues, they see lots of ships and containers on the ground, including a whole Spanish galleon. A few miles later, they find the way blocked by a bunch of cars and survivors that aren't moving. It turns out there's a huge chasm between England and France that can only be crossed by walking on a very dangerous rope bridge. Nathan is terrified and says he can't do it, so John goes first to serve as an encouraging example. The family starts walking on the rope very slowly and carefully. When John coughs, he almost slips but recovers quickly. Suddenly a very strong wind begins to blow and pushes the bridge, so everyone has to hold on extra hard to avoid falling. Thankfully, the wind stops quickly and the family can keep advancing until they make it to a rock formation in the middle of the chasm. 2 ladders link the rocky formation to the other side of the abyss. While the family takes a moment to rest, an earthquake hits the area, but thankfully nobody falls. The trio gets on the ladder and starts crawling, however they have to stop and hold tight when the earthquake strikes again. Rocks fall from the chasm walls and soon the rope bridge breaks, sending various people to their deaths. On the other ladder, a man sees that the bridge doesn't exist anymore and turns around, pushing another guy into the abyss in the process. That ladder is starting to slip, so the man jumps and lands on top of Nathan right before the rocky formation crumbles, causing the second ladder and a few people to fall too. The desperate man can't hold on and also slips to his death, but Nathan grabs the edge of the ladder and his parents help him climb back. The rest of the rocky formation is crumbling too, so the family hurries up and finally reaches France safely. Now the trip continues on foot. However, no matter how much they walk, they just keep seeing a wasteland. Suddenly they hear a gunshot and find Dennis pointing a gun at them. He lowers it when he realizes that they aren't robbers and offers to take them to his home. Minutes later, the group makes it to northern France. Dennis is currently living in an old factory, which he's powering with the engine of a car that in turn is powered by solar panels. He introduces them to his daughter Camille and his wife, who is mute and wheelchair bound because the radiation affected her nervous system. During dinner, Dennis learns that John's family is trying to reach the crater and warns them that the area is extremely dangerous. Only 2 cities are standing and people are fighting for control of the crater, including the remnants of the French army. Camille takes Nathan to her room and shows him all the cool stuff Dennis has scavenged from other buildings. In return, Nathan shows her his star sheet. The next morning, Dennis gives John a map and points at the least dangerous path. He also shares the name of a friend in the army and gives John an old photo so they can prove they know him, which hopefully will get them help. Suddenly Dennis starts crying as he asks John to take Camille with them. He wishes he could take her to the crater himself, but he must take care of his wife. John hesitates, but Allison agrees. Afterward, Camille shares a tearful goodbye with her parents and leaves with John's family in Dennis' van. After a few hours of driving, Allison notices that the teens are in a bad mood and decides to stop so they can take a break. John starts a game of Would You Rather and this improves everyone's mood. Suddenly some vehicles appear on the road and a bunch of soldiers surround them. Camille mentions the name of her father's military friend and convinces the soldiers to help them cross the area. By nighttime, the group reaches a war zone where the army is fighting insurgents. A soldier guides them behind the lines so they can sneak through the forest without being seen. They have to stop moving when something explodes near them, but then they keep going and cross a wire fence to reach a more dangerous area. Now they have to run as fast as possible to avoid the bullets and explosions happening around them. Soldiers are dying all over the place and the family even watches a man catch on fire. Their guide calls the bunker to inform them that he has civilians, and his teammates tell him to keep moving while they provide cover. The group continues to advance and finally reaches the trenches, where John almost collapses as he coughs. As they walk through the trench, the family has to dodge many bodies and see more soldiers being shot. Eventually they reach a ladder and their guide sends them out into the forest, telling them to just walk ahead until they find a camp. In the morning, the group finally finds the military settlement. Camille notices some mountains that weren't there before and John concludes they must be close to the crater. When they ask a soldier about Dennis' friend, they discover he's dead. The other soldiers don't want to help them, so John tells them he's dying and only wants to protect his family. A man takes pity on them and gets them a spot on their bus. John's family and a few other survivors leave in the bus that will take them to the crater. However, the trip is interrupted when something explodes on the road. Suddenly the bus is surrounded by insurgents, so a soldier goes out to fight them, but he's immediately shot down. Then an insurgent kills the driver too and forces all the refugees to get off the bus. John sends his family out but stays behind to jump on their insurgent and start a fight. Another armed man wants to help his partner, but a refugee hits him in the head with a rock to bring him down. Inside the bus, 2 gunshots are heard. John comes out victorious with the gun but also reveals he was shot. Everyone boards the bus again and Nathan keeps pressure on John's wound while Allison drives. Moments later they make it to the top of the new mountain and the family helps John walk until they find the crater. The rumors turn out to be true. The crater is a beautiful place with fertile land and no contamination, perfect to start rebuilding. At that moment John collapses and his family surrounds him to say a final goodbye before he dies. Everyone cries while Nathan repeats his father's prayers. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you can watch more videos like this. Thanks for watching.